All right, so we're gonna see how this turns out at the end of it. But yes, welcome. Thank you for joining the conversation today. I'm here with Jay, the lovely Jay. He's gonna be breaking down the intersections of psychedelics. You know, touching through the Obeah practice. I believe you wanted to touch on the Venn diagram and so to speak, spirituality and the matrix. And yeah, there's a wealth of knowledge that I'm very keen to listen to. Um, I'm a beginner. I class myself as a beginner in this space, so I'm still learning. Um, and trying my very best to connect with as much people as possible, especially with our community, because as there's a lot of initiatives and conversation taking place, but we're not necessarily always invited to those conversations. So, with this platform, with the Acacia Records, it was very much about creating a space where we can talk, lead this conversation and talk in truth, talking out honestly, talk from a culturally attuned perspective as well, and just be us. You understand what I'm saying? Not having to feel like, we have to come at it any particular way. There's a saying that Baba Kalindi Ai, one of the main man, one of the main guys that have been pushing psychedelics within our community for many years. He said that the experts haven't been born yet. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, okay, let me humble myself. Do you know what I mean? Let me not, try to present myself as such. Let me reach out, and I'm very much in particular, interested in getting the feminine perspective as well. So I'm new to understanding the space is feminine in its essence, in its nature. Um, I've been a part of various grassroots communities for years, many years. So I've seen many men lead these organizations and conversations, including myself, But we're in a space where I'm truly understanding now the the relevancy of kind of bridging the masculine and the feminine, and so with that being said, please introduce yourself, and yeah, man, let's get going. Let's have this conversation.
Hi everyone, I am Jay Percy, the artist. I'm not just an artist, I'm an ObeahWoman, I guess avid gardener, forager, psychonaut, pseudo-philosopher. I like to think about things a lot, and I guess thinking about things a lot results in me talking to some quite interesting people in my life about these things. So this community building aspect is something that's really important to me, because when you share your stories, someone else either can relate to that or they don't relate to it immediately, but something resonates and you're able to build from there. So that's what I'm hoping to do. So thank you so much for letting me be in this space here, because it means that we get to community build and actually bring these healing tools to the community in a way that we haven't had access previously.
No doubt. Can I also just be careful of your mic, because you're going in and out at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you better now. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
No worries. All right, cool. So in regards to the space that we're in, this so-called psychedelic renaissance and so forth, where do you place yourself? Like, what was your introduction or experience into this space?
Well, it's interesting when you asked where I place myself. You said something at the beginning that you're learning still. I feel like you never stop learning. I feel like my place at the moment is I'm really learning about this. I'm still on a journey myself, and I don't want anyone else to ever think that I'm not. I just happen to be on a different part of the journey than a lot of people. And what brought me into psychedelics was the fact that I was in a place in my life where I was really, really struggling with myself. That was coming out in my relationships, like my friendships, my intimate relationships, and it got to a point where I was really, really, really frustrated. And at the time, I would have classified myself as, like, classify myself now as like an extreme bootlicker. So I had this like anger and rage that was just kind of sitting in me, not knowing what to do with it. And then Gren felt how I came down, and that experience really made me realize how little the system we live in actually cares. Like immigrants, brown people, black people, anyone who really doesn't fit into their little category of things. So with that sort of new idea after it came down that, you know, these people don't really care about us, what else have they been lying to us about? I was offered a microdose of MDMA by my boyfriend's now fiance. He said, you know, this might be an experience that will be valuable to you. So I did. I microdosed the tiniest bit of MDMA, and we were at a festival, and we spent the whole time just talking and connecting. And this was a relationship like in tatters. It was ready to end.
Right.
But we spent this whole time just really being so open with each other, and it was a revelation. And it made me realize that I had been lied to so much about the system. It was like having that red pill, blue pill moment, and the veil lifted on exactly what was happening. So that really spurred me into wanting to try mushrooms. It was just calling to me. So I did. And I have had one of the most profound mystical experiences in my life that set me on my journey to really making healing central to my life.
Okay, yeah. So you came into this space just kind of no expectation, I guess. Not sure what was going to bring. And
I really didn't know what it was going to bring. You know, you hear about this, you hear that you're going to you see some like weird shapes, maybe you'll hallucinate a bit, it'll be like a party, like some, I don't know, some like 70s slideshow in some terrible sitcom. It wasn't like that at all. I didn't go in expecting much. I just expected to go in and learn more about what I had been lied to about. That's all I was after. What have I been lied to about? How can I learn what I've been lied to about?
What about your partner's experience? Did you share like a similar experience to you, or was it different?
Well, with the MDMA, it certainly opened him up, and he was just a lot more forthcoming. And from that moment onwards, I think we've both been a lot more forthcoming. You know, we've both gone to therapy from this, and we found it so valuable for, I guess, undoing any of the unhelpful programming that we've received in our earlier years, right? Because our parents, they parent in the way they know how, which is to protect you against harms they went through. But in doing so, it's not always the most cognizant way of parenting. It's teaching your kids to avoid fear instead of to like go for love and life, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of that programming that he's had undone, I've had undone. And it's been a beautiful journey to be on together.
That sounds, but talking about the programming, especially as a man myself, that's something that I'm experiencing as we speak. Do you know what I mean? In regards to the conditioning, you know.
Men aren't really encouraged to be particularly forthcoming about what they're feeling. You know, it's man up, boys don't cry. It's that sort of rhetoric that we're very familiar with now in like the wider psyche. And it's commendable that you're like attuned to this, and you know that you have these things to undo, because not everyone's so lucky to have that luxury of coming to that realization.
Yeah. And it's a journey as well. You know what I mean? A hell of a journey.
Such a
So
journey.
it's been a very hard process. Do you know what I mean?
It's not easy, is it?
Yeah, no doubt. Something that I'm still learning as we speak. I guess is developing developing a language to express our emotions, if that makes sense. And I feel like me coming into this new understanding of myself in regards to manhood and so forth is also related, I believe, to the plant technology or the plant medicine. You know, depending on how you wanna define it. And again, it's that whole kind of bringing in to the feminine space, that feminine area, you know, that I'm exploring at the moment. But yeah. So you class yourself as and when I came across this, I was like, this is the first time I think I've ever heard anybody over here in the West actually class himself as an ObeahWoman. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, because I'm from Jamaica, so you know, I'm familiar with I'm familiar with that.
I'm from Jamaica and Antigua. My dad's Jamaican, my mum's Antiguan.
Right.
My dad's family, they are Maroons, and for the longest time, I thought it was just a story that my granddad told. And then I ended up doing a DNA test and found some DNA that was Nigerian West African, but in Nova Scotia around the 1700s.
Yeah.
It's like, that's so bizarre. That doesn't make any sense. It must be wrong. And it was only a couple of weeks ago that I was researching that. And there was a group of specific tribe of Maroons that were taken from Jamaica to go to Nova Scotia in Canada for, it was they were meant to be there long term to sort of help build stuff. But they were complaining. They're just like, it's so cold. They petitioned the captors. We need to go back to Jamaica. It's way too cold here. So this specific group of Maroons were in Nova Scotia specifically for 4 years and then went back to Jamaica. So in that like DNA bit, I can pinpoint the tribe
that's dope.
Maroons that my family have come from, which
dope.
It's so comforting to have. And do you know what? The Obeah was really, I wouldn't say it's the first step in me acknowledging my ancestors, but declaring myself as an ObeahWoman was a really poignant step in reclaiming what belonged to my Maroon heritage.
So how would you, what does that kind of like entail? Because obviously there's various connotations, to that whole science, because it really is a science. In fact, you know what? Yeah, I want you to kind of bring in that. What is being an ObeahWoman kind of entail?
Well, Obeah is a magical. I say magical because we only have European words to describe it. It's a magical practice that really encompasses retribution and justice making. It's about knowing the land. So that's sort of foraging for herbs that heal, whether that's growing food that you have yourself, whether it's poisons, because poisons were a very important part in sort of disposing of slave masters. It's about learning that. I do less of that. I can't poison anyone, unfortunately, however you see it. But it's about definitely understanding the poisons. It's about understanding how the metaphysical works. I often describe myself as an applied metaphysicist because it's about understanding exactly what the natural laws are of the universe and working with those to, propel certain situations in your life. And it's not a deviation of the timeline. It's not really a manipulation of the timeline. I like to think that if Obeah weren't meant to be, we never would have been given it by the universe. It's really an all-encompassing practice that recognizes that everything has energy, and we can work with that energy and tap into that energy, whether that's in a positive or a negative way. And I say positive and negative like that because let's go back to my example of like poisoning someone today in the 21st century is pretty terrible, right? It's one of the worst things you can do. How could you do that to someone? Could you say the same thing of our ancestors who were captured and enslaved and needed these negative things in order to keep their survival, so you and I can sit here and have this conversation today?
No doubt. No doubt.
So that context is important. And in the West, we don't really get the discussion around that context, that sort of the use of force in order to get what we want, because it's seen as radical. Because I guess we are told that the times we live in are so happy and airy-fairy that we actually don't need to use force to get what we want. We can just sign a petition and send it to our MP, and that's how we do things.
No.
Yeah, but that's a specific deviation of natural law and how we use the metaphysical in order to get what we want. Now, Obeah specifically, it originates in West Africa. If you go back before that, there are a lot of West Africans who will tell you they are from Kemet, and this practice is from Kemet. And if you go back into the history, there's a great book called Mami Water. I think it's called the Sibyls, Sibyllines. They were prophetesses who, at the time, way back when, thousands of years ago, were soothsayers. They were, I guess, fortune tellers. Not really fortune tellers, it was a lot deeper than that. They gave strategic advice to Roman empires, Greek empires, people who were in positions of power. But it was realized that perhaps these black women were getting a bit too powerful, using the mystical to help guide leaders and rulers. So that's where you hear in European history these tearing downs of temples in like Athens where the Vatican is now. Well, really, all of these prophetesses were being taken out of these spots, and a lot of them fled to West Africa. So you have this understanding in Obeah that even though it's a West African practice, it's from Kemet. That's where it originally comes, or it comes from the Israelite tribes of black people. That's where it originally comes from. So there's a very rich history behind it that I would definitely suggest you take a look into, because it's so nuanced.
And just like kind of going back to the whole, the poison aspect. So I know, like, through my understanding, that was definitely one of the key parts of becoming a priest, or becoming, a babalawo, or being initiated into those science, understanding what these entheogens, or these plants, because a lot of them, if you don't understand the science behind them, can produce. They both produce life and death. You know what I'm saying? And depending on how you utilize it, it could be used for either or either. But it's the so-called wisdom, that is applied with these entheogens that you can use them. I mean, there's a little buzz happening around in the psychedelic space around the Convos, which is the poison of the toad. So they're actually utilizing the poison, of these toads to go through a purging or a cleansing process. You know what I'm saying?
I've experienced the Convo. It is, it's a very unique experience. I would definitely recommend, if you could find a practitioner and you are well on your healing journey, it is something that is good to add into the mix there.
No, I was actually speaking to a lady today from Birmingham, and she runs Convo ceremonies. So I was like, I'm coming up there, man. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm on the process of looking into the bufo, again, another secretion from the toad. But speaking to a shaman from Mexico, how he kind of prescribed it, he suggested I go do the Convo, and take it kind of from there, depending on how
you bear with it, how it works with your system. Yeah.
And I've seen a friend of mine. He showed me a video of his experience.
Was he throwing up?
Yeah, he was all over the place. But at the same time, he said to me that he felt he was very centered. He thought he was like cross-legged, just like peaceful.
Yeah.
And then when he actually saw the recording of himself, people said it was a complete different type of internal process or experience.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm
Totally.
definitely looking into that. So yeah, in regards to that, thank you for that breakdown as well of the whole Obeah practice. Because again, even though I'm from Jamaica, like I'm very much into the science of voodoo or Vodun. You know, when I started to get into that understanding of what that means, Vodun being a West African word, a fun word, which means spirit. You know, and you know, depending on how you again utilize spirit in a lot of these traditional cultures, there isn't a set. Yeah, this is good and this is bad. You know what I'm saying? This is of God and this is of devil. It's very much intertwined. You know,
Yeah.
and there's
I
a
think
balanced approach.
the programming we've received, it's very specific. Everything needs to be good or bad, right or wrong. Where the Obeah, I think a lot of it exists in the grey. I would call it grey magic because it encompasses both. Because you are doing work with Duppy, you're doing spirit work, and I guess to a lot of Abrahamic faiths, you know, they will tell you today that that's not something we do, but you go back into the Bible and it's something that they're doing.
No, definitely. I mean, the conversations that are taking place now in the psychedelic space is very much the conversations that's been taking part in these communities, in these villages that practice these science. You know, once upon a time, seeing visions and traveling to different dimensions and so forth. But like, I'm on a different type of time, man. You hear me? I'm not on that devil type of thing. But the conversations that are taking place right now are very much open to the potential of the unseen and the unheard.
Yeah.
You know, nature in its totality, not just what we can observe with our physical senses. You know,
definitely, because science is always improving. We're not in a place right now where we have the approved technology to observe how this stuff works. But me as an ObeahWoman, I can record and see and experiment and notice consistencies with, you know, even when I'm doing readings with clients, it becomes a science then because I understand exactly. I throw shells. So my divination technique is I throw shells, and I'm able to understand each time a little better how the formations land and what it means. And it really does move into this realm of science because there is a logical way you can approach the situations which tend to be pretty consistent each time, which is science, right? If you're able to repeat an experiment.
No, definitely. How would you say like your sort of is that something? Is it through the psychedelics or entheogens that you embraced the ObeahWoman side of you, or was that like how do they gel together? Was it prior? Did they work together?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, you know. When I was 7, I knew I was. My word at the time was I'm a pagan. I knew I was something of some kind, and it was my mum was very much like, "Oh, you can't do that. You know, there are witches in the family, and you can't be jumping onto that." And it was very much shut down, and that it still kind of continued. I had my own, I guess, scientific book where, in fact, what I would do. I would write situations that would happen the next day at school, and then they would happen verbatim, and I would start to add weirder and weirder things in to see if it would happen, and it would happen like as I'd prescribed it. But then eventually, when I was a teenager, my mum found this book again and was like, "You're not having this stuff in my house." So I kind of just parked it, and it never really left in the sense that I was always doing something that felt energetically involved. So if I was sitting at a desk at work, it would have to be set up in a certain way to let the flow of energy move in a certain way, or, you know, perhaps if I was waking up, it would have to be ritualized. So I kept a lot of these practices. What really turned a corner for me was I was just having the worst time at my day job. I couldn't stand it. It was just so hectic, and I just started meditating every single day and like repeating affirmations to myself. And then that's when I had taken I then decided to take the mushrooms, and it was probably the most poignant trip in my life. Because even though it was only 1.5 grams, which is a relatively small dose, I made sure I had fasted for the week. I had gone into it clean of thoughts of what I perceived to be damaging people. And I went in with my intention of intuition. How do I get my intuition back? Because I was just very aware through all that meditating. I had no gut feeling, that gut feeling to do something. And I was with my fiance and his sister-in-law at the time. We'd all decided to do this together. And they were sort of just happy hippies vibing in the living room. And I was sat there with my eyes closed because I felt I needed to close my eyes. And I performed this mudra, which I didn't understand at the time. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea what a mudra was. I just felt the urge to put my hand in a certain way, and I brought it to my eyes, and I was propelled into what I can only describe as a void. And it was such a contradictory place. Everything, when you reached out, was so far away, yet it was at your fingertips. It was boiling hot, like the hottest you've ever been, but somehow freezing cold at the same time. And it just felt like a limitless place where nothing and everything existed. And I've never experienced anything like that in my life. And then I turned and I saw a figure, and it was a woman, a dark woman, long, thick hair, sat there meditating. And I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "You know who I am." And I agreed, like, "I do know who you are." And I said, "I'm trying to get my intuition back." She's like, "But you've always had your intuition." I said, "You're right, I have." And she said, "You weren't meant to be here, but you were really dedicated and you clearly wanted to find something, so you're here for a moment, but I'm going to have to send you back." And I said, "Send me back where?" And as I said, "Send me back where?" I was like sucked out of this place, almost like I fell from the sky. And I was tingling all over. I was crying. By this point, my fiance and sister-in-law, Are you okay? Are you fine?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm perfectly happy. I'm the happiest I've ever been," she said, with buckets of tears flooding down her face. And as I started to come out of the experience, I'd closed my eyes again, and there was a snake at the bottom of my spine, and I was sort of like trying to unfurl. And this thing wrapped its way all the way up and shot straight out of my head and exploded, and it was gone. Visions, the room moving, everything was gone. It was completely disappeared. And it took some time to integrate that, but I decided to start Googling parts of it. And that particular mudra, this is the Kali Mudra. And when you do research into Mahakali, she's very associated to the Kundalini snake. So this was a point in my life I had no idea about any of the words that were associated to anything I experienced. But I'm convinced I experienced Mother of Mothers, Mahakali. And that is what set me on my journey to reclaiming the Obeah. And saying, actually, this is the thing I've been all along. I just was refusing to put a word to it because of fear. Because of fear of how I might be interpreted. But now that I declare it, and I'm very loud and proud about it, nothing but blessings. The ancestors are very happy, and I feel it every day.
I can imagine. At this moment, I'm just wondering, because a lot was said, and that was deep. Does anybody have any questions that they wanna throw out there or ask?
I got sucked into that story like I was there.
Everyone's good. I guess they're soaking in.
Wonderful. Feel free to ask any questions at any point. Happy to answer.
No, give me a second. I think someone just joined. So I'm just gonna quickly. Or if Solace, if you're there, if you don't mind messaging in the welcome group the link that the person can join, so we can continue the conversation. That's if you hear me. Yeah, that experience sounds profound, man. It sounds profound, and it's interesting that you said that the way you approached it. So you fasted in a particular way, so you kind of approached it with a certain level of intention, with a certain level of respect, because I know there is a conversation in and around, dosages and so forth, and it gets the lines get blurred from what I'm experiencing, because I've had profound experiences, or interesting experiences on quote unquote low dosages. And again, this is something that I've newly discovered, that the high dose and the low dose is more so from a Western concept. Because when the traditions, that utilizes entheogens is just the dose. Do you know what I mean? It ain't just take this.
Here's some tea. We didn't weigh it out. We don't have scales.
That's what I'm saying. It is what it is what it is. Welcome. If the who's it? Brown.
Oh, hello.
Hey, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Perfect. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for being here.
If you don't mind putting yourself on mute, but like I said, if you have any questions throughout, just unmute yourself and feel free to answer any questions.
Where do I put myself on mute? I haven't done this before.
All right, so we're all newbies to this space, so we're all figuring it out as we go. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna see if I can put you on mute on this side. Oh, you done it? Oh, cool. No problem. Yeah, this platform, as we go, you will get more smoothed. But yeah, I wanted to kind of speak about, because you said sort of the Obeah practice in regards to the restorative and justice aspect of it, and I'm very much interested in this, the psychedelic space facilitating that as well. So not just a journey of, the true evolution is self-transformation, but I'm seeing it as a spiritual, a social, political, a tool for liberation in a sense, so in regards to like the restorative aspect and process, obviously we have a specific story as a people, as a community, whether you want to call Black, African, Caribbean, Moor, whatever denomination you want to affix to yourself. But there is a specific story and relationship that we have with the West. So I've always kind of been in this space. I've always been interested on how thus psychedelics, or these entheogens, play its role in the restorative practices for us as other people. I don't know, have you any thoughts in regards to that?
Yeah, I think you've really hit the nail on the head with it. It's about putting yourself in a place where you're self-healed, because the old adage goes that hurt people. And surely healed people. And once we have enough healed people, we'll have enough people to genuinely work together and say, do you want to withdraw from this? Yeah, I think I do too. And the more people you have like that, the less they can stop us. Protests are important. Writing to your MP in this climate is important. But I honestly don't feel it's as important as working on yourself and saying, I am a sovereign being and I'm removing myself from your absolute BS. That's where the mushrooms come in. It makes you combative, not in a traditionally, like, when you think of the word combative, you think, oh, it's someone who's just here to cause drama, start a fight, create noise and nonsense for no reason. It makes you really sort of active in claiming back your autonomy, your natural sovereignty as a human.
No, yeah, that kind of, you know, experiencing this space from, you know, various perspectives. So, you know, the research that I've been doing, you know, the conversation that's been taking place. I haven't found that much, you know, platform or spaces that speak about, you know, that sovereignty from, you know, that self-liberating aspect, you know, and just being, you know, being a part of the community, you know, there's a lot of healing that needs to take place, you know, on various levels. And for me, one of the key things for me is, like you said, like kind of stepping outside of that paradigm. You know, that's, for me, that's one of the ways to start beginning to heal trauma, because you start to realize a lot of the collective trauma that we experience doesn't necessarily belong to us on so many levels. You know, whether that's literally, you know, us buying into a definition that somebody else has given to us, you know, experiencing life through somebody else's lens, and also, you know, coming to terms with generational healing as well. You know, me coming to terms that, you know, some of these initial fears or these blockages that I held are, that's grandma. That's great. You know, you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's not necessarily me per se. However, I'm, you know, putting this space and giving this awareness to deal with it. And when I kind of stepped out of that kind of paradigm to say, I exist outside of that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I definitely, I understand the matrix. You understand what I'm saying? I understand the necessity within this paradigm from plugging in and plugging out. Like, I get it. But when you understand that's what it is, you understand what I'm saying? Like, you understand that is what you're doing. This is not reality per se. You're stepping into something. You start to kind of have a different kind of relationship with it. You know what I'm saying? You know, yeah.
And through improving that relationship with understanding what the matrix is, you gain this like level of confidence that you didn't know was there to be gained before. It's not cocky, it's not arrogant, it's like true confidence when you're able to say, actually, I'm the universe experiencing this very specific network of mycelium. I am literally this thread of the connection that is experiencing this thing. If you see a lot of my work, I tend to put the flower of life in there because it's something that I see a lot when I journey, and it rings true every time. It is a web. You are a strand of that web, and, you know, without one of those strands, the pattern falls apart. But it's important that I'm the universe experiencing this path, because this is what the universe wants to experience right now through me. As long as you can align with that, then, yeah, you're right. You get to this place with the matrix where you feel empowered enough to step away when you need to.
No, definitely. And that, it happens on so many different levels. I mean, just my understanding on the brain on psychedelics and how it becomes more entropic or more, you know, chaotic. It starts to utilize various areas. It's not necessarily channeling through one, you know, one system, you know, one government. It very much becomes sovereign in its own self. You know, you start communicating on, you know, on a wider level. Same way, you know, when you're journeying, you're communicating with more of yourself. You're communicating with more with nature, with the universe. So, you know, it's no surprise where, you know, the classification of these plant technologies, you know, in the West is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's a paradigm shift, you know. So it's a game changer, literally.
Huge game changer.
You know? So, like, one of these the reasons for, you know, these type of conversations as well was to kind of dispel the myths that are out there. You know, there is a lot of fear, you know, in regards to this space that I've kind of experienced when talking to people. You know,
what have you experienced? What kind of fear do you notice in people?
Oh man, the main, it's interesting. So I think the main thing that comes up is, so people get ahead of themselves. So they say, you know, I've heard that, you know, you start to see aspects of yourself, so forth, and that once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's come up more than once. You know, that fear of seeing something that you can't unsee. So having to basically being afraid to do the work. You know, there's that level of I'm not ready to kind of be truthful and honest with myself. So I'm gonna, you know, and my question is always like, well, how do you feel right now? Like how is life for you at this particular time? Because we already know the things that we're avoiding, whether that's consciously or subconsciously. We know. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's not like you don't see what's blocking you. You may be ignoring it. So that's one of the things. Obviously, the whole, like you were saying earlier on, the whole, you know, hallucinating and seeing things and so forth. I'm like, you know, that's another, you know, another fear. But then at the same time, you know, it was interesting. I was having a conversation one time, and you know, the same kind of like questions that we have for psychedelics, we don't necessarily have it for anything else. So we'll go to, you know, McDonald's or somewhere and not question any of the ingredients. Yep, get it to me. You know, we'll be smoking weed, drinking alcohol, all of these things. It's cool. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, and it's like when it comes to psychedelics, the thing that is, you know,
suddenly everyone's the FDA.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, bro, you smoke cigarettes, man. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you talking about? Like, you know. So it's really like, just dispelling the myth, I guess. You know, how do we do that in our community? I mean, I do understand also our relationship, our collective relationship with, you know, the you know, medicine and, you know, the medical side of things, and, you know, hospitals and so forth. Like, just that kind of perspective. So, what are your thoughts in regards to, you know, alleviating those misconceptions? Like, how do we go about doing it?
Well, the first thing I start with is telling anyone that they would have to probably consume their body weight in mushrooms to die, and you're not going to do that. You're just not going to do that. That's just not going to happen. Literally, you can overdrink water. You can die from drinking too much water. It's the same thing with this. Like, you're not going to consume so many mushrooms that it is going to be life ending. I also point out to people that, you know, alcohol produces an altered state of consciousness. This just produces an alternative altered state of consciousness. But you're actually fully in control. There isn't a point where I can only speak for myself, because I'm sure there may be people who aren't of sound mind who might go into this and essentially they tell themselves a story of they don't have control over this thing. But you do. It's not you're controlling over it. You have control over yourself. So you're not going to cause yourself any real harm as long as you're being present and conscious of what you're doing. Setting is important. So this reduces the possibility of having a really scary journey. Sometimes we need challenging journeys. Sometimes we do need those challenging journeys where it's like a slap in the face. It's like, what are you doing with yourself? But like a bad, scary trip that essentially is going to leave you traumatized and you're not going to come away from it having learned much. Setting is important. So that means you go into it with the right mindset. So you come in with a purpose. And you make sure you're in a space that you trust, with people that you trust, and you understand how important those things are in order to facilitate the experience you're looking for. You know, I think once you tell people what the boundaries of this experience are, it makes it a lot easier to contain. It like makes it a lot easier to explain that way as well.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. I think I agree with that. And I think on my side, what I do when I have conversations with people as well is, you know, that there is this innate fear of the unknown. you know, this innate fear of darkness, you know, and you know that unknown is the place where you want to be. That's where all the, you know, because we often think, you know, we often go into, or the concerns that I've heard is, you know, go into it and, you know, what if I have, you know, a bad trip, which, you know, there's some people out there say, you know, the bad trips are where you learn the most, you know, but we don't necessarily go into it and say, oh, what if I have a, you know, a good experience, you know, a pleasurable experience? Like, what if I actually receive what it is that I need to receive, you know?
It's so weird how people are programmed for fear as opposed to curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's a matter of having those facts. Like, chances of you dying on this thing, I don't think there's ever been anyone recorded in history dying of this thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, you won't get addicted to it as well. It's non-addictive. You know,
it's not addictive. I could not touch this for a year and be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I like to engage semi-regularly because there are things that I essentially want to learn along the way, and so I use it as a tool, as a part of my practice to learn things, ask questions, contact ancestors. I use it as like a telephone line, essentially, to get to those places. But it's not addictive. It's not the type of thing that you're like every day as you wake up, you're going to do it. Oh my gosh.
Nah,
that would be horrible.
Yeah, you're not going to, you're going to pace yourself with it, which is the beauty of it as well. You know, you learn to respect it. You know, you learn to respect it. So yeah, that's definitely one of the main things. Again, I'm just gonna ask anybody that's listening, if you have any questions, please go ahead. Everyone's intently listening.
Everyone's intently listening. It's great, but questions are still very welcome.
Can I just ask, do you use it like as part of like a creative process if you want to do some writing or journaling or some sort of prompting to?
I'm a painter, so I'm an artist, and believe me, I have kind of tried. There have been times where I've taken it and my intention, I write down my intention, and it's like, I want to expand my creativity, and I'll set out my materials, and that never happens. Normally it's my eyes closed, I end up going back into my head, and it takes me to a place that will help me come back to that empty canvas after I've sort of cooled down from it. But it's not something I tend to be able to do in that state because I am just downloading so many messages. I wonder if it's something that I could work on. It's a matter of discipline. Who knows? But right now, no.
But I've heard there's because obviously like you know, the whole world of microdosing, you know, which is quite big over here in the West, and I think I've come across people utilizing it for that specific thing. But at the same time as well, it's good to remember that. So for one, we're predominantly speaking about mushrooms, and just within that space, there's so many variations, so many different type of species, you know, different types of mushrooms that produce different type of effects, you know, and just the psychedelic space within it itself. There's, I mean, as you sometimes forget weed, marijuana. That's a psychedelic. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's a part of the you know, the whole psychedelic family. All of that to say, there are those that, you know, enhance you know, that creative process, and then there's those that kind of, you know, enhance that kind of introspective type of, you know, feeling. I'm still yet to
I would say this is very introspective. Yeah.
Same with for Happy, for example. Happy. When I so that's one of the ones I don't like taking, but I like taking, if that makes sense. It's like it's, you know, and once I go into that space, there's a presentness. There's a stillness. I can't do anything but be present. you know, to the point where I'm just like I'm literally laid back, you know, and I'm noticing my breathing, and I'm noticing my heartbeat. I'm noticing how my body feels, the energy that's rising up and down, which is you know, a different experience that I have, you know, on the mushrooms, or you know, other technologies. But yeah, there's definitely those that if you got a busy evening, or you know, you got a creative evening, you just want to avoid. Do you know what I mean? And then there's those that, you know, you may want to bring into the fold. So yeah,
I would say the cannabis is better for the creative stuff. Than, maybe not for everyone. I know some people get very lazy or paranoid on it, but I'm very fortunate that I seem to be quite high functioning in that I just bang out painting after painting, and it works for me.
No.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're coming up to the hour mark. Kind of wanted to keep it in that frame, you know, so we don't go too over. But is there any I guess, you know, so to speak, last words you would want to share or express, or is there anything that we haven't really touched on that you kind of wanted to bring?
No, I guess just to summarize, these are important tools for healing the self. And when we heal the self, we can see what the matrix is for what it is. And when we can see the matrix is for what it is, we can choose to opt in and opt out as we choose. And if enough of us opt out, if enough of us pull together and buy land, grow our own food, you know, Monsanto is poisoning everything with Roundup. We now 98% placentas now have plastic in placentas. We're actively being poisoned by the West. This work will move us away from that and move us closer to the DNA structure we're supposed to have without all of this unnecessary intervention. And it is entirely unnecessary, every single little bit of it. There's a way to prevent illness before you get there. There's a way to cure certain illnesses with what we have on this universe given Earth, and mushrooms is a way to discovering that. So if you can discover that for yourself, then you're doing your bit to bring the system down, which is ultimately what we need if we're going to thrive as a species. Can I possibly just plug my Instagram page and my upcoming podcast?
Come on, yeah, man, bring it.
Brilliant. So I've got a podcast that I'm going to be starting with my dear friend Nikki. I feel like I've known her for a lifetime. And we're starting a podcast called the Afro Animist Podcast. So we'll be probably talking about a lot of things like this, but we really want to make the spiritual secular. So we want to bring it into the day-to-day of how the psychedelics, the spiritual melds with, you know, the most mundane things in the world. So I think it's going to be a really, really good thing to listen to. And if you follow me on Instagram, Jay Percy the Artist, JayPercy the Artist, I will release an update as to when that's going to be ready to be launched, and I look forward to having you there.
No doubt. And for those who so you've posted your details in the network section of the Discord group, so all of that information that you've just spoken about will be there. Anytime you've got the podcast going up, send links into the Discord to take people over there. This is what this space is for, man, for us to collaborate, you know, and just build collectively. So yeah, man, I appreciate your time. Definitely.
Thank you for your time. This has been so good.
No problem, man. We definitely have to do this again as well. For those anybody that's interested, so this platform is very new, the Discord platform. So the Acacia Records it has a website of its own, where there's more information in regards to plant medicine, plant technology, entheogens, psychedelics, whatever you want to call it. So from videos on cultivation, from videos to understand the African perspective of psychedelics and so forth. So we'll be bringing a little bit more into this space as well. So we're going to be building it collectively. So yeah, man, just stay tuned, spread the word or spread the spores, as people like to say. And yeah, man, we give thanks. Appreciate everybody that tuned in.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.
No doubt. You too.